Shamanism and psychology, and the relationship to hypnosis, and maybe a little bit of alchemy if we have time tonight. So, shamanism is the oldest spiritual practice in the world, and it's been around for thousands and thousands of years, and it has been used to heal individual communities and societies. Before there was medicine and before there was psychology, there was shamanism. And before there was psychology, there was hypnosis. And before there was hypnosis, there was shamanism. And shamanism is rooted in the belief that there is a spiritual dimension that can be accessed in order to heal physical and psychological problems. And shamanism may have influenced some and a lot of the principles and theoretical frameworks um, of psychology. But psychology as a field developed only in the late 1800s as a separate scientific discipline. So it needed to be scientific, meaning we ought to measure it. Because in shamanic practices, there is a lot of spiritual science, but not a science where you measure things so you can compare it against some sort of standard or placebo, right? So psychology wanted to become a separate scientific discipline in the 1800s. And prior to 1800s, psychology was considered a subfield of philosophy, dealing with the speculation about the human mind. And at the time, it didn't have any practical applications such as therapeutic intervention. Shamanic practices have had therapeutic intervention since the beginning of times, right? A lot of people mistaken shamanism for a lot of occult and voodoo practices. Even voodoo, it's not a bad practice if when used properly. So a lot of the words are misused, mislabeled, and misinterpreted. And shamans back then, they were very well aware of the importance of the mind body connection and the role of the emotions in the physical and mental health can be traced back to the shamanic practices. Um, Now, in addition, psychotherapy techniques such as visualization, guided imagery, and dream analysis have been inspired from shamanic practices. So, what we have today is hypnosis and all kinds of hypnotherapeutic techniques and styles. It's merely a shamanic journeying, right? I'm gonna get more deeper into that. And shamanism is rooted in the belief that there is a spiritual dimension that can be accessed in order to heal the physical and psychological problems. Now, the word shamanism comes from the word manku tungus, which is formed from the verb sa, to know, which means that a shaman is literally one who knows. And we usually refer to psychologists, the know-it-all, or people in a psychology field, people dealing with the human mind. They're pretty much know-it-all. You can't teach them anything. All right. So, as a shamanic practice in since the beginning of time, a shaman is a person who attends to the psychological and spiritual needs of a community. Well, now we have religions and all kinds of religions that they're tending to the spiritual needs of the community. Um, But somehow spirituality and religion in some areas of the globe got to be misinterpreted, because we all have a spirit and we all have spiritual needs, but not all of us tend to a religion, and not all of us are religious, and not all religion are tending to your spiritual needs. And the techniques that enable shamans to access information which is not ordinarily attainable are known as shamanism. So shamanism are techniques, and is the oldest spiritual practice known to mankind. So in shamanic cultures, a shaman acts as a healer, a mediator, spiritual guide, and so on for their community. And a shaman will use different type of techniques, such as trance-inducing rituals, hypnosis, yeah, to connect with the spiritual world and to help individual heal from physical and psychological ailments. Because we already know that we can use hypnosis to decrease the amount of pain. Yeah. So back then, before civilization, there were no medicine other than plants, whatever was available in Mother Nature, to use to heal someone, to heal someone that had a physical ailment, right? Now, the biggest emphasis the shamanism emphasizes is the importance of the connection between the mind, body, and spirit. And unfortunately, nowadays, because psychology has become a science, there is not as much emphasis on the spiritual part of the mind body. So we have the mind body connection, and the spiritual is left aside, and it's not included so much in the therapeutic practices. A lot of this psychological therapeutic interventions do not include spirituality, and that has contributed to, how do I want to say that, in order to for the integrity, for the wholesomeness, for the holistic means integral. Holistic means wholesome, all together, 100%. That's what holistic means, 100%. So when we mind, body, spirit, if we leave the spirit out of the mind, body, we only have like 60 some percent, right? So it's not holistic, right? It's not wholesome. And now a shaman is an especially gifted individual who is able to contact and communicate with the realm where spirit beings offer wisdom and help, and who activate, transmit this knowledge to others. And the way we can understand it today is through dreams. How often do we have dreams that feel so real and bring us a wealth of knowledge, and we go on and apply that knowledge, and then miracles happen? So you could understand it as such, or you can also understand it as an, not necessarily telepathic communication, but kind of sort of, like when two people talk and they finish each other's sentences, there's some sort of telepathy involved in there. And then when you think about somebody, and then the phone rings, it's like, oh, I was just thinking about you. How come? Look at you, you're just calling me now. So that's not quite at a random like that. there is a communication of thought. Carl Jung talks about the collective unconsciousness. So all the thoughts that we think, they go somewhere, right? So there is a field of knowledge. Let's say that all the thoughts that we think, they go somewhere and they go into the field of knowledge. So some of us, and especially a shaman, is gifted with accessing this field of knowledge and asking the questions needed for the client. Let's use the terminology of a client today, for what a client needs. And what's from a psychological perspective, shamans are spiritual practitioners. Well, yeah, because psychology wanted to go scientific and left shamanism all, yeah, psychology, therapeutic psychology doesn't want to include spiritual practices, most of it, not all of it, for various reasons. Mostly it's not fashionable, or it's thought of as not being scientific. Yeah. But shamans are spiritual practitioners who claim to deliberately modify their attention in an attempt to access information that's not ordinarily available to others. Mm? So that's what we do in hypnosis too. When we guide a client in hypnosis, and a client is in trance, we pay such great attention to all of the ideomotor responses to know what to do next and make sure that the client is having a smooth healing experience. Because in hypnosis, we don't want a client to be re-traumatized like in talk therapy. There's so much talk therapy and different type of techniques in psychotherapeutic interventional techniques that involve talk, where a client is re-traumatized by having to talk about what bothers them. So in hypnosis, a client doesn't have to talk about that, doesn't have to re-experience their past trauma. So here, us as hypnotherapists, we have developed, or hopefully developed, but we have developed after a considerable amount of time, what the good hypnotists have developed a very great degree of acuity, modifying the attention so we can access information not ordinarily available to others. And also, mentalists have that acuity is very, very, very sharp. They pay attention to such details that ordinary people will not. And a lot of people that play tricks, but that's not shamanism. So let's leave that aside. Now, Carl Jung was very, very interested in shamanism. And he revived alchemy. He included alchemy in his psychology, and Carl Jung is such an important figure in the field of psychology. Without him, there would be no analytical psychology as we know it today. We would not have archetypes. Well, shamanism, they already had all types of archetypes. That's how they dealt with knowledge. That's how they used knowledge in form of archetypes, and they used healings through the form of archetypes. And I remember a discussion with shamanic leader of a tribe nowadays, praying for the rain. And there's several, just like in hypnosis, we have the neural words, the neural language that you use for the hypnosis. So do shamans work with natural archetypes, praying to creator gods to help with the land, because shamans um revered the land, the Mother Earth, with a lot of respect. Things we don't do nowadays. We don't even think of Mother Earth. We just build all kinds of concrete things above it, and we destroy Mother Earth, right? So before civilizations, people were very respectful to Mother Earth, um, for many reasons, including spiritual reasons. And Carl Jung um, was very interested in shamanism, and this reflects his belief in the importance of spirituality and in spirituality and the unconscious in human psychology. And this interest in shamanism was influenced by his own personal experiences of vivid dreams and visions of shamanic journeying, things that he encountered in his vivid dreams, in his shamanic journeys. He encountered a wise and elderly figure whom he later identified as Philemon. And Carl Jung was in his mid 30s when he went through a period of intense personal crisis after his break from Freud, and he recounted his dreams in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflection. And in his dreams, he recounted Philemon first appearing to him, stating that he saw a sea blue sky covered by brown clouds of earth that appeared to be breaking apart. So Philemon is what Philemon to Carl Jung was what I early noted earlier, that the shaman being a gifted individual who is able to contact and communicate with spiritual realms, to communicate with beings of wisdom that transmit knowledge. So Carl Jung communicated with Philemon, and this is well documented in literature. It's just not as well talked about it. Um, and Philemon was Carl Jung's spiritual guide and provided Jung with a lot of insights and guidance into the deepest mystery of the human psyche and the nature of the universe. So it's no wonder to me that Carl Jung brought to humanity's attention archetypes, all kind of different types of archetypes. And Jung continued to have a lot of encounters with Philemon over for a long period of years. And archetype for him was Philemon was for him the archetype of wisdom and spirituality of the collective unconscious. And when we talk today about the collective unconscious, we immediately talk about Carl Jung. And Philemon is a spiritual guy who helped Carl Jung understand and integrate this information in words, so you can communicate it in words to other people, so other people can understand it. Because not all information that we understand we understand it in words. We usually understand information archetypal, in an archetypal way, conceptually, right? And Carl Jung is deeply believes that this encounters with Philemon helped him access a deeper level of understanding, and that this experiences provided him with insights into the nature of psyche and the spiritual dimension of reality. And even to this day, there is the Philemon Foundation, if or it might be named a bit differently, that honors very very deeply. It's a non-for-profit that continues Carl Jung's work, and honors all of Carl Jung's work and makes sure that everything that Carl Jung wrote is kept intact. Um, Now, a lot of scholars have interpreted Carl Jung encounter with Philemon in various ways. Well, of course they would. If you don't have such an experience yourself, of course, science's first role as a scientist, your first role is to doubt, is to question, is to doubt. How can that be? Because it's not measured and it's not common. So if it's not common and it's not measured, then it's not science, right? But nonetheless, Carl Jung clearly experienced Philemon, and that is very well documented. Now, shamanism, similar to Jung's theory of the unconscious, is rooted in the belief that there is a spiritual dimension that can be accessed in order to heal physical and psychological problems. And moreover, shamanic therapeutic practices make use of the four elements that were very important to Carl Jung, the air, fire, water, and earth, and the four direction, north, south, east, west. So number 4 is a very important element to all that is. And here we have the human body, where we have the physical, mental, emotional, and the spiritual. And when we go to tend to someone's health and we leave the spiritual out of it, there is something is missing. So spirituality is important, but spirituality as a religion is not the same, because throughout the years, not everybody understands the religion they practice. And throughout time, many of the religions have imposed so many rules and so many rigid rules, and if this then that religion, in for the most part, to some extent, begin to provide a great sense of guilt in a lot of people, and that's not healthy. A great sense of guilt and shame just by adhering to religious dogma. But this doesn't apply to everybody, because true religious people that adhere to their religion, they're just very similar to shamanic practices, in the old time, right? Now, nowadays, in the 20th century, the field of psychology has demonstrated an increasing interest in incorporating shamanic practices into therapy. And there is a great number of psychotherapists that sometimes refer their clients to a shamanic healer. And also, there's a great deals of psychotherapists that are learning shamanic practices to incorporate into their therapeutic methods. And it just makes it all wholesome, because remember in our Ericksonian training, when we were taught to never leave out the spiritual, never leave out God, never leave out what the client believes as in a spiritual power, to always involve that spiritual helper to aid the client's healing. And that's important. So in the 20th century, when psychology started to incorporate shamanic practices into therapy, this approach is called shamanic psychology or shamanic inspired psychology. And although shamanism has greatly influenced the theoretical frameworks of modern psychology, there's still a lot of simple shamanic practices that can be incorporated into the psychotherapy. And the first of that would be hypnosis. It's shamanic journeying. And the difference between a shamanic journeying and a hypnosis is that in hypnosis, we use words to guide the client to enter a trance and to find some sort of resolution and to access, to arrive to a sense of realization, to access internal resources to heal, right? Now, in a shamanic journeying, what typically is used is a drum that creates, when the drum is used in a particular rhythm, it stimulates a theta brainwave. And theta brainwave, it's most, in theta brainwaves, a lot of people might fall asleep, but hypnosis happens the best when the client accesses theta brainwaves. That's the best hypnosis ever. And this has been measured. I mean, you can do hypnosis in alpha brainwaves, of course, and lower alpha and upper theta. But in shamanism, when you have the drum and you drum in a specific rhythm into a shamanic drum, because the shamanic drums are made out of animal skin and mounted on a wood frame. There's no metal involved in that. It's just a very natural sound that induces a theta brainwave. And then when you go into a shamanic journeying, all you are provided, well, there's different kinds, right? But typical, if you go to a shamanic journeying training class, what you're going to be provided with this drumming, and then the instructions to follow certain steps and then have your own experience. And then you come back and describe the experience that you had, as opposed to being guided step by step into the experience. So it's hypnosis, and that's self-hypnosis. And it's wonderful. So some days we're gonna have to have you run the experience of shamanic journeying. And now, shamanic journeying and hypnotherapy share very important similarities, because both of them involve entering into the altered state of consciousness, hence the theta well, alpha brainwaves and theta brainwaves, which facilitate healing and personal transformation. You have to quiet your mind in order to arrive to those internal resources you need to make the changes, or to release, or to stop ruminating over some thoughts that are not helping you anymore. You have to enter the quiet. You cannot constantly run loud thoughts and then expect to not be stressed, because you are going to be stressed. So you have to spend a little bit of time in a quiet to access the information it's available for you. What do you need to make it better for yourself? So that is just so easily accessible with hypnosis and shamanic journeying. That it's fascinating. It fascinated me all of these years, and it still does. Um, Now, there's different kinds of shamanic journeying. Some techniques involve drumming, like I mentioned. Some of them involve chanting. Some involve visualization. Um, and but all of them have you travel. That's why it's called a journey, because you're going to travel to a spirit realm to seek guidance, to seek healing or guidance. Now, in hypnosis, we are guided into a relaxed and focused state of consciousness, often through guided imagery and suggestion, to access our inner resources to address specific issues or goals. Both shamanic journeying and hypnotherapy can be used to address a range of physical, emotional, and psychological issues such as anxiety, depression, addiction, chronic pain. However, there are some differences between the two practices, including cultural and historical context, as well as specific techniques and methods used. And therapists must place great emphasis on the subjective experience of the client. So there we go. Subjective experience of the client. And talk therapy doesn't work very well. Well, it takes a long time. It can take a number of years. But the client's subjective experience, it's the client doesn't get to access as much of that inner resources to address their specific goals, because they're constantly in a thinking mode. When you do talking, you're not quiet enough to listen to what might be available, like when we're doing hypnosis. Because how many times you too have experienced hypnosis that someone guides you into whatever words they're using, and then you have your own experience, like, oh, you hear a couple of words and that takes you into an experience. Oh, I haven't thought of that in a long time, what a great idea. And then here you have your inner resources alive. Like, I remember when I experienced one of your hypnotic induction, Randy. You brought out taking the garbage out, and I was like, "Oh, what a great idea! Taking the garbage of the thoughts out. If there's a bout of ruminating thoughts, reframe that as garbage, and then you just take it out. Piece of cake." So great metaphor, very very good, very useful. Do you have any questions by now?
I'm not. Are you sure that was me? I don't remember that using that. I guess it was.
Oh,
But
you
yeah,
want
that's an interesting.
Yeah. Oh, you want? Yes, I.
Uh, Interesting. Uh, no, no questions so far. Let me think. Um, I mean, uh, I mean, if somebody comes to see you, do you practice shamanism, and how do you distinguish that between just regular old therapy?
Well, shamanism only if they ask me. And some I have some people that, well, because of my website, and on my website I have a page that's addressed to spiritual shamanism, alchemy, and Reiki. And a lot of the people that I have a good amount of clients that they contacted me specifically for spiritual healing. And depending on what the client needs, um, we can do spiritual hypnosis. Chemical hypnosis is just so powerful. And if the client is spiritually inclined, then we make use of those kind of tools. And if they're not spiritually inclined, then we don't make use of those kind of tools. But I have a good amount of clients that which they have practiced spirituality for a good number of years. And when I present to them some concepts, they know how to use them. For other clients, I have to introduce them to some concepts so they would know how to use those when guided into try this or X this or do this. Because not everybody will have um, the same result, right? Um, and and then if if a client would like to have a shamanic healing ceremony, then we just go ahead and do a shamanic healing ceremony. And if the client wants to have a shamanic soul retrieval, then by all means go ahead and do a shamanic soul retrieval. Soul retrievals, it's a very powerful modality. Miracles happen in soul retrieval, and usually you can. It's good to take a photo of the client before and after, because after a soul retrieval, people just usually look much younger. It's fascinating. I mean, what just happened? Because nothing was touched. And even in hypnosis too, sometimes when my clients open their eyes after a session, I look at it and it's like, wow, you look good. The eyes are fully open, like they're so alive. And they come to you all tired, right? But then, they open their eyes after 20 minutes and they're fully alive. It's like, wow, that looks good. So I know I've done something good when I see that physical result. And soul retrieval is a fascinating concept. And it's said that when we experience trauma, um, portions of our soul flee because the soul doesn't want to experience that trauma while in the body. And then trauma gets involved because the body doesn't have enough soul to endure the trauma. So then you go retrieve the portions of the soul, and then it heals the trauma. It's fascinating, and you're not even addressing the trauma. You don't even talk about the trauma. You don't even ask, so what happened and how did you feel after? And then what happened then and how did you feel then? No, none of that. It's just fascinating. And does it work for everybody? We don't know. We don't know. But the worst that can happen, you're going to be relaxed. But I've had a good amount of shamanic ceremonies, individual and in groups, and just to see, well, people's feedback, of course, it matters. But besides that, because sometimes during a shamanic ceremony, shamanic healings, people are not necessarily cognitively aware of what has happened, but later on they report so many improvements. But you can see it in their face, you can see it in their disposition. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating.
I hate to ask. This is probably the wrong question to ask, but when you say soul, when the soul leaves the body, where does it go, and where does it retrieve from?
Well, it's a
Is that
portion of the soul. It's not the whole soul, because if the whole soul leaves the body, then you're dead. It's just a portion of the soul. It's like when you go to sleep, think of it as when you go to sleep, you're not consciously aware. So when you go to sleep, the soul travels. The soul is not in the body when you go to sleep. The soul travels and travels and gets together with other souls. And it says that when your dreams are filled with groups, um, then your soul is working at group level. It's quite interesting, right? Um, and Yeah, just portion of the soul. The soul is very, is extremely. How about people that have experienced near that? And there's a lot of testimonies on that. They've experienced near that, the body where their bodies were in the emergency room being reanimated, and they were above, from above, they were watching themselves being reanimated. That was the soul watching the physical body being reanimated and deciding whether to go back in the body or not go back in the body. That's the spirit. That's your soul, your essence, right? And it's fascinating listening to this near-death experiences. And sometimes the conversation goes like, well, the body is in a lot of distress. I'm not sure I want to go in a body to experience all of the distress. These are real experiences people have had near that. And then the conversation goes even further. It's like, yeah, you're going to experience a lot of distress up until you get reanimated, but after that, you're going to have some wonderful experiences. So, wouldn't you want to have these other wonderful experiences? Um, yeah, and you need to listen to people that have had these near-death experiences, and a lot of them describe something. There is an archetype that they describe, that they go somewhere, and then they feel that a lightness. They feel so light and feel with ease, as in floating in a cloud. And that's why in hypnosis we use that metaphor, that you're floating on a cloud, and you are a cloud and you're floating on a cloud, because then you just allow the body to just relax and not constantly think and run thoughts and all kinds of thoughts, because that's then anxiety goes skyrocket, right? Yeah.
Do people actually come and ask for shamanic healing? Do they ask for it by name like that?
Oh
What
yeah.
would they want healing for? What would be the
The same
any
reasons that
problems?
they come for hypnosis, the same reasons they go to psychotherapy for, exactly the same reasons. Yeah.
Why would they ask for shamanic healing as opposed to hypnosis or psychotherapy?
Because shamanic healing goes to very deep layer to access some root causes. And if these root causes are in a spiritual realm, then you can access those root causes in a spiritual realm. And by addressing this, then you help the physical heal as well, right? Now, in shamanism, in shamanic journeying, we have three worlds. We have the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. And depending on what's needed, a shaman gets to journey to one of these worlds, or all the three worlds, or together, usually one world at a time, and bring significant information that the client needs for the healing, a lot of wisdom. right? And the greatest hypnotherapist today, um, it wouldn't be wrong to call them shamans, because nowadays we have contemporary and urban shamans. And I've experienced great hypnotherapists that they were great shamans. They just knew. They knew how to do it, how to. Uh, Sometimes all you need is the right amount of words put together for you to find those inner resources. And but soul retrieval, when I did my training in soul retrieval and I had to practice on people, I practiced on my mother, because no way my mom could make up things. I mean, she wasn't knowledgeable enough to make up things. My mom and psychotherapy psychotherapy didn't even exist in Romania, right? So so I did a soul retrieval from here in US, and my mom was back home in Romania. And I told her when she was going to go to sleep that what was going to happen. We had an agreement. And then when I did a ceremony, I prepared, and slowly I've journeyed, and I waited for her soul to be not necessarily available, but there is, after enough training, because you get to develop your acuity, you know when to proceed further or not. So then I went to a journey and I retrieved a portion of her soul, and it came with an image. So it had an image, and usually in a shamanic soul retrieval, um, you know how in today's world you have people that someone steals your heart or someone breaks your heart. They're just pieces of the soul missing. So in a shamanic soul retrieval, you journey to one of these worlds, and sometimes you have to negotiate with those thieves to bring back those portions of the soul. It's fascinating. And sometimes you can just be in a car accident that impact and that trauma and that scare. So the soul doesn't want to be in a body, and little portion flees. But because a little bit of the portion flees, then your mind and the body, okay, no, I'm not going to say this, because it depends from person to person. That can cause more trauma for some people, and for some people it's actually useful to have a little bit of the soul flee momentarily, and then it come back. But for some other people, it doesn't necessarily come right back after the accident. Or anybody that has experienced unpleasant things related to their anything that was unpleasant, scary or disgusting. Certainly when you're faced with a lot of disgust, it's not just anxiety and fear, but in a situation where you're just so disgusted, it's like the soul doesn't want to have that experience. It's very fascinating. It's fascinating. And it's not, you have to be trained in order to perform a soul retrieval. You have to be trained. Past life regression is not as complicated as a soul retrieval. Soul retrieval takes some serious training.
Well, does it, is it so I assume that it's not based in religion. It's not like Christian, Judaism,
No,
uh,
no, it's
any
not.
of that stuff.
No, no, it's not. It's not related. It's a journeying. So imagine you going into a hypnosis, and you just go and do self hypnosis, and then you have your own experience. Then you have your own experience, and then you have your journey, and then you come back and you tell me what the experience was. It's pretty much like a dream. You see things, you experience things, and you have this experience, right? And it's like a dream. Like you can have a movie. I call them little movies. And so a shaman, when a shaman goes into a soul retrieval, will enter a journey, and he will have this movie, some sort of a movie where they know what to do and how to interact, and they know how to distinguish between the positive and the negative.
Uh, and you mentioned also, Carmen, about alchemy.
Alchemy is it's a fascinating subject, and that's has a direct relationship to psychology as well. And Carl Jung, I'm gonna get Carl Jung into that discussion again, but that's we can talk about that next time, because well, we are getting close to an hour of this. It didn't feel like an hour, did it? No, uh-uh, no. So no, it doesn't feel like it, because it's we're enjoying this conversation, and then time just flies. So the soul is enjoying, or the soul is having a great experience. So when time is dragging and dragging, and it's like, oh, it's not 5 o'clock to go home yet, the soul is not enjoying that experience. It's a human experience that we have to have. So let me tell you about the three worlds: the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. In shamanism, the upper world is the realms of the spirits, and is often described as a place of light and clarity, and is associated with the qualities of transcendence, purity, and spiritual growth. And shamans access this upper world to seek guidance, wisdom, and spiritual insight from spirit guides, power animals, and other benevolent spirits. Power animals, we can talk about power animals maybe in next podcast. That's fascinating subject to these power animals. And the middle world is the realm of human experience, and is the world where we live in. It's associated with qualities of material existence, duality, and the human condition. In shamanic practice, the middle world is where the shaman interacts with the physical world and performs healing and transformative work on behalf of an individual or a community. The lower world is the realm of the underworld, and is described as a place of darkness and mystery. Is associated with the qualities of origination, origins, renewal, and the hidden aspects of the psyche. That's why you talk about depth, the lower world. And shamans access the lower world to confront and heal personal or collective shadows. Like earlier, in a soul retrieval, a shaman would travel to the lower world to negotiate with those thieves that stole pieces of the soul, so they can negotiate with the thieves and the pirates, so they can bring back a portion of the soul. So in the lower world, shamans confront and heal personal and collective shadows to retrieve lost parts of the soul, and to connect with the creative and transformative energies of the earth. So it's no piece of cake to journey to the lower world. and there is training into that. And we make use and we honor and make use of Mother Earth to journey, to begin to journey into the lower worlds. I remember my very first shamanic journey training. I went straight into a shamanic initiation. I've never seen anything of it. But once I described my experience, the shamanic trainer told me that I was initiated. And I was like, well, what's that? I didn't even know what an initiation was back then. So it was, yeah, I find it amusing. But even to this day, I still remember the movie, the visions that I saw during my experience, and it was quite an experience, and it was just a introductory shamanic journeying where the instructor just instructed me how to journey, but many of us already journey. We just don't know it's a shamanic journey. But once we can label it, and once we can identify it as a technique, then we can use it for many personal and collective benefits. Because nowadays I journey in for the client, and even with hypnosis, I don't journey to go retrieve a soul or lost parts of the soul or to negotiate anything, but there is information that is available, and I make myself available to that information so I can help the client. And then I make this information available to see if the client wants to use the information or not, or just present it as a possible reframe, or just bring it over as information. What if? Let's look at it, see if this would provide a resource to address a specific issue or goal, and usually it does. Usually it does.
It's interesting that it can be something that can be learned.
Yes, just like hypnosis. Just like you went to school, and both of us, we went to school and learned hypnosis techniques, and all of the ethics involved. Just so there's a lot of ethics involved in shamanic practices too, because before there was anything that had to do with the mind and the soul and the spirit, there was shamanic practices, right? And in shamanic practices, you can just have a pure shamanic practice to go journey um, and praise creator and creators and Mother Earth and all of what the earth provides, and not as a paganism, no, but as to give thanks for all of the fruits, then the foods that Mother Earth provides for us, and to all of the creator gods that blesses us with rain, so we can have rain to for the seeds to grow, to bear trees and fruit, so we can eat and nourish ourselves. So yeah, if we go over the old mythology, there are all kinds of gods. There's a god of rain, there's a god of sea, there's a god of air, there's all kinds of creator gods in old mythology. But shamanic practices, shamanic journeys are through a shamanic practice, you get to experience the sacred. And the sacred, I think I have it on a screen right now. The William James, Carl Jung, Mircea Eliade, and Rudolf Otto are all scholars who have written extensively about the concept of the sacred. And it in their fields of psychology. And it pains me that today psychotherapy leaves the aspect of the sacred out of the the client session and client's healing, because everybody has a unique perspective, but all of these people, they share a common interest in understanding the experience of the sacred, right? Now, William James believed that the sacred and God are natural and universal human experiences. Yeah. Mircea Eliade distinguishes between the sacred and the profane as two distinct categories of experiences. And according to Eliade, sacred refers to a realm of experience that is filled with spiritual meaning and significance, while the profane refers to the everyday secular world of ordinary experience. Um, and the psychological phenomenon of a suddenly appearing extremely enigmatic and at the same time fascinating state in which one feels influenced by higher power was described as a numinous experience by both Rudolf Otto and Carl Jung. Numinous experience that we can talk about for many hours about numinous experience, but the sacred is something to be experienced, and you have to do a little bit of practice to experience the sacred. And oftentimes we have the experience of sacred when going to church, and that's what churches are for, to help us experience the sacred, right? Um, but we don't necessarily need a church to experience the sacred, because we can enter into meditation to experience the sacred. We can enter self-hypnosis. We can do shamanic journeying to experience the sacred. Or we can just simply shift into a state of being of respect and reverence to experience the sacred, to experience the other human beings as sacred beings. Now, that when we get to shift to generate that state of being, into that state of reverence, that it's such an experience that you don't want to get off of that state of being. Because if you begin to see others as sacred humans, you are sacred, they are sacred, then they've done nothing wrong. And then you can respect them for who they are and what they do, and you look for similarities and you seek how to get along with them, as opposed to argue with them and attack them. That is just, it's one of the most beautiful state of being that we can shift into, and it's easy to shift into that state of being. I've been teaching this for many years, shifting into generating states of being. So we can we could call that experiencing the sacred, but today the sacred has such modified definition in everybody's vocabulary and everybody's understanding, that we need to redefine what the sacred is, and we need to redefine what reverence is, because reverence is not bowing to a king. Reverence is bowing to the sacredness of what is, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's about an hour.
Yes, it is about an hour, and this has been a good session today. And next time we can continue to talk about shamanism. Who knows what questions you're going to come up with next time. All right. So
Sounds good.
that was this shamanism, psychology, and hypnosis for emotional intelligence. And thank you. And we will see you next time.